A bullied teen defended a special needs student, not realizing he was the principal's grandson. The words echoed in Ethan Miller's mind as he stared at his bruised reflection in the bathroom mirror. The irony wasn't lost on him. For years, he'd been the target, the one whose shoulders hunched against locker slams and whispered taunts. Now, sporting a split lip and a darkening eye, he had become something else entirely, a defender. The cold water stung as he dabbed at his swollen face. 3 years at Westlake High, and nothing had changed. Same hallways, same hierarchy, same hollow feeling in his chest when he walked through those double doors each morning. 17 years old, and already Ethan had mastered the art of invisibility. Eyes down, hoodie up, earbuds in. It was safer that way. Ethan? His mother's voice filtered through the bathroom door, tentative and worried. Honey, you've been in there for 20 minutes. Are you okay? I'm fine, Mom. The lie came easily, practiced. He'd been fine for years. Sarah Miller wasn't fooled. When Ethan finally emerged, her eyes widened, hand flying to her mouth. Oh my God, what happened? Ethan sidestepped her reaching arms. Nothing. Just tripped during gym. Another lie, another day. His mother's face crumpled slightly, the way it always did when she knew he wasn't telling the truth, but felt powerless to break through his walls. She was trying. A single mom working 2 jobs since Dad left 4 years ago. She didn't need his problems too. There's pasta in the fridge, she said, finally adjusting her nurse's scrubs. I'm on night shift again. Call if you need anything? Ethan nodded, already retreating to his room, to the sanctuary of solitude where no one could see the cracks in his carefully constructed armor. As the front door clicked shut, he collapsed onto his bed, wincing as his ribs protested. The day replayed in his mind like a bad movie he couldn't turn off. It had started like any other Thursday. The mindless shuffle between classes, the strategic navigation of hallways to avoid Jason Reeves and his followers. Jason, with his varsity jacket and perfect teeth, had made Ethan his personal project since freshman year. But today had been different. Today there had been Noah. Noah Parker was new to the school, having transferred just last week. He moved differently, spoke differently. Special needs, someone had whispered, though Ethan didn't know exactly what that meant. What he did know was that Noah smiled at everyone, waved enthusiastically in the hallways, and seemed blissfully unaware of the unwritten social codes that governed high school survival. Ethan had been at his locker when he heard it, the unmistakable sound of taunting laughter. Down the hall, Jason and 2 of his friends had surrounded Noah, mimicking his slightly uneven gait, his enthusiastic hand gestures. Hey, retard, Jason was saying, voice carrying down the now silent hallway. Did you forget how to talk? Or are you just stupid? Noah's smile had faltered, confusion and hurt washing over his face. I'm not stupid, he'd said, voice trembling. My name is Noah. Noah, Jason had mocked, drawing out the syllables. Noah, the moron. Something had snapped inside Ethan then. A dam breaking, years of swallowed anger surging forth. Before he could think, he was moving, dropping his backpack, inserting himself between Noah and Jason. Leave him alone. His voice had sounded strange to his own ears. Steady, low, nothing like the frightened whisper he'd used the few times he'd tried to stand up for himself. Jason's surprise had quickly morphed into delight. Well, look who found his voice. The ghost speaks. Just back off, Jason. Ethan's heart hammered against his ribs, but he held his ground. Or what? Jason had stepped closer, breath hot against Ethan's face. You gonna make me, Miller? What happened next was a blur. Jason shoving him, Ethan pushing back, then fists in pain and the taste of blood. It ended with Assistant Principal Donahue pulling them apart, Jason sporting a bloody nose, Ethan's eye already swelling shut, and Noah, wide-eyed and frightened, being led away by the school counselor. The strangest part? As Mr. Donahue had marched them to the office, Ethan had felt something unfamiliar unfurling in his chest. Not fear, not regret, but something that felt dangerously like pride. Now lying on his bed in the quiet apartment, Ethan gingerly touched his swollen lip. Principal Warner had been surprisingly lenient. While Jason got 2 weeks suspension for instigating and bullying behavior, Ethan had received only 3 days of detention. The principal's eyes had been unreadable behind his glasses as he'd studied Ethan, asking quietly, "Why did you get involved, Mr. Miller?" Ethan hadn't had a good answer. He still didn't. All he knew was that something about Noah's helpless confusion had struck a chord so deep it hurt. His phone buzzed with a text from his only friend, Mia Chen. "Heard what happened. You okay?" Everyone's talking about how you went full superhero. Ethan snorted, then winced at the pain. Superhero? Right. More like an idiot who just painted an even bigger target on his back. I'm fine, he texted back. Not a big deal, but it was a big deal. They both knew it. Tomorrow he'd walk into school a different person. No longer invisible, no longer safe. His phone buzzed again. Noah's grandfather was in the office when they brought you guys in. He looked really upset. Ethan frowned. He hadn't seen anyone except the principal and his assistant. But then he'd been focused on the blood dripping onto his favorite hoodie, on the fact that he'd actually hit someone, on the strange feeling that something fundamental had shifted in his world. Whatever, he texted back. I'm going to bed. Sleep didn't come easily. His face throbbed, his thoughts raced, and somewhere in the back of his mind, a small voice wondered if tomorrow would be the beginning of something better or just a new kind of hell. The next 3 days passed in a surreal haze. Detention with Mr. Matthews, the history teacher, was surprisingly peaceful. Just an hour of silent homework time in an empty classroom. Jason was absent, suspended as promised, but his friends made their displeasure known through glares and, accidentally, bumped shoulders in the hallway. Noah was absent too, which sent an unexpected pang of worry through Ethan. Had the incident been too much? Had his parents pulled him out? It was on the 4th day, sitting alone at his usual corner table in the cafeteria, that Noah found him. Can I sit here? The voice was tentative but bright, like sunlight filtering through clouds. Ethan looked up, surprised. Noah stood clutching a lunch tray, rocking slightly on his feet, eyes hopeful. Sure, Ethan mumbled, sliding his books aside. Noah beamed as if Ethan had just offered him the world, then carefully arranged his food, sandwich, apple, chocolate milk, in a precise pattern before sitting. You have a black eye, Noah observed, head tilted. Does it hurt? Ethan shrugged. Not anymore. You got it because of me. It wasn't a question. You fought Jason because he was being mean to me. Heat crept up Ethan's neck. It's not a big deal. It is to me. Noah's directness was disarming. Nobody ever fought for me before. Usually they just laugh too or look away. The simple truth of those words hit Ethan like a physical blow. How many times had he looked away when Jason targeted someone else? How many times had he felt relieved it wasn't him? I'm sorry that happened to you, Ethan said finally, surprised to find he meant it. Noah smiled again. That same unreserved smile that seemed to come from somewhere Ethan couldn't reach. My grandpa says sometimes people are mean because they're scared or sad inside. Do you think Jason is sad inside? The question was so unexpected that Ethan nearly choked on his water. I don't know. I've never thought about it. I think about it a lot, Noah said, carefully peeling his orange. My mom says I need to try to understand people, even when they're not nice. She says everyone has a story. There was something about Noah's matter-of-fact wisdom that made Ethan's carefully constructed walls feel suddenly flimsy. This boy, whom everyone would call simple, saw complexities that Ethan had never considered. What's your story? The words slipped out before Ethan could stop them. Noah's hand stilled. I have autism. That means my brain works differently. Some things are hard for me, like understanding when people are joking or knowing the right thing to say. But other things are easy, like remembering facts and noticing patterns. He paused, looking directly at Ethan. What's your story? No one had ever asked him that before. Not his teachers, not his few acquaintances, not even Mia. Everyone just assumed he was who he appeared to be. Quiet, unremarkable, invisible. I don't have one, Ethan said finally. I'm just here. Noah studied him with surprising intensity. Everyone has a story. Maybe you just haven't found yours yet. He said it with such conviction that for a moment, Ethan almost believed him. The bell rang, signaling the end of lunch. Noah carefully repacked his uneaten items, movements precise and deliberate. Can I sit with you tomorrow too? He asked, standing. Something warm bloomed in Ethan's chest. Yeah, he said, surprised by the smile tugging at his lips. Yeah, you can. As Noah walked away, Ethan noticed something he hadn't before. The curious glances from other students, the whispers behind hands. But for once, they didn't seem to be mocking. Instead, there was something like respect. The realization followed him through his afternoon classes, a strange new feeling he couldn't quite name. It wasn't until he was walking home, the late afternoon sun warming his back, that he recognized it. For the first time in years, Ethan Miller felt visible, and strangely enough, it didn't feel as terrifying as he'd imagined. So, you've adopted the new kid? Mia said 2 weeks later, dropping her tray next to Ethan's. Her dark hair was streaked with purple this month, her eyeliner sharp enough to cut glass. They'd been friends since middle school, both finding refuge in their shared outsider status. She by choice, he by circumstance. Across the table, Noah was carefully arranging his French fries in ascending order of length, tongue poking out in concentration. "It's not like that," Ethan muttered. Mia raised an eyebrow. "No? You've eaten lunch together every day. You walk him to his classes, and yesterday I saw you glare down Tyler Peterson when he was staring too long. If that's not adoption, I don't know what is." She wasn't wrong. Somehow, Noah had become a fixture in Ethan's carefully isolated life. What had started as one lunch had become a routine, then something more, an unexpected friendship that defied explanation. Noah looked up, beaming at Mia. "Hi, I like your hair. It's purple like the amethyst my grandpa keeps in his office." Mia blinked, caught off guard by his directness. "Thanks," she said, the edge in her voice softening slightly. "Your grandpa collects rocks? Not just rocks, minerals and crystals and fossils." Noah's whole face lit up. "He has a whole cabinet in his office at school. Sometimes I help him label them." "At school?" Ethan frowned. "Your grandpa works here?" Noah nodded enthusiastically. "He's the principal. Principal Warner is my mom's dad. I live with them now because my dad is in the military and gets moved around a lot. So Mom thought it would be better if I stayed in one place for high school." The cafeteria seemed to tilt sideways. Principal Warner, the stern, slightly intimidating man who ran Westlake with quiet authority, was Noah's grandfather. The same man who had looked at Ethan with those unreadable eyes, who had given him the lightest possible punishment for fighting. "You didn't know?" Noah asked, noting Ethan's shocked expression. "I thought everyone knew. People always treat me differently when they find out." The implications crashed over Ethan in waves. Had Principal Warner asked Noah about him? Was that why he'd been so lenient? Was Noah befriending him out of some sort of family obligation? A thank you mandated by his grandfather? "I have to go," Ethan muttered, grabbing his backpack and standing abruptly. "I forgot I have to talk to someone." He fled, ignoring Noah's confused call and Mia's questioning look. The bathroom was empty, thankfully, and he leaned against the cool tile wall, trying to steady his breathing. It made sense now. The special treatment, the lack of serious consequences. It hadn't been about what he'd done. It had been about who he'd done it for. The principal's grandson. Of course. The door swung open and Mia stepped in, glancing around to ensure they were alone. "Girls' bathroom is for girls," Ethan said flatly. "This is the boys' bathroom, genius." She crossed her arms. "Want to tell me what that was about?" "Did you know?" The question came out sharper than he intended. "About Noah's grandfather?" "No, but I don't see why it matters." "So what if Warner's his grandpa?" "So what?" Ethan pushed away from the wall. "Don't you get it? That's why I only got detention. That's probably why Noah started sitting with me. His grandfather probably told him to be nice to the sad loser who defended him." Mia's expression hardened. "Wow. That's what you think of him? That he's not capable of choosing his own friends? That he's what? Following orders?" Put that way, it sounded cruel, diminishing. But the swirl of confusion and betrayal wouldn't settle. "You don't understand," Ethan said, running a hand through his hair. "People like us don't suddenly get breaks, Mia. There's always a catch. People like us," she repeated slowly. "And what about people like Noah? Where do they fit in your worldview, Ethan? Because from where I'm standing, that kid has been nothing but genuine with you. More than I can say for how you're acting right now." The bell rang, saving him from having to respond. Mia shook her head, disappointment clear in her eyes. "Figure your shit out, Ethan," she said, moving toward the door. "Because if you throw away what might be the most authentic friendship you've ever had because you're scared of actually mattering to someone, that's on you." The door swung shut behind her, leaving Ethan alone with his thoughts and the lingering feeling that he'd just made a terrible mistake. For 3 days, Ethan avoided the cafeteria, eating his lunch in the library instead. He ignored Mia's texts and took different routes between classes. It was easier to retreat, to rebuild the walls that had protected him for so long. But Noah's absence left a strange hollowness he couldn't fill. He found himself looking for that enthusiastic wave in the hallway, missing the earnest questions and observations that had somehow become the brightest part of his days. On the 4th day, as he was shelving his books before heading home, a familiar voice spoke from behind him. "You're avoiding me." Ethan turned to find Noah standing there, hands fidgeting at his sides, eyes direct as always. "I'm not," Ethan lied. "I've just been busy." "That's not true," Noah said simply. You're upset because my grandpa is Principal Warner. The crowded hallway suddenly felt too loud, too exposed. Can we not do this here? Noah nodded, understanding at least that much. We could go to the art room. It's empty after school. Reluctantly, Ethan followed him down the hall to the art classroom, a bright space filled with easels and the smell of paint. Noah shut the door behind them, then turned to face Ethan with unexpected determination. I didn't tell you about my grandpa, because when people know, they treat me differently, he said, the words coming out in a rush. They either try to be my friend because they think it will help them, or they're extra careful around me because they're afraid of getting in trouble. I just wanted someone to like me for me. The simple honesty of it hit Ethan like a physical blow. How many times had he wished for the same thing? To be seen, not for the labels others put on him, but for who he truly was? I thought, Ethan started, then stopped, the assumption suddenly seeming childish. I thought maybe your grandfather had asked you to be nice to me. Because of what happened with Jason. Noah's brow furrowed. Grandpa doesn't tell me who to be friends with. He says I have good judgment about people. He paused, thinking. He did ask about you after the fight. He wanted to know if you were nice to me before Jason was mean, or if you just didn't like seeing someone get bullied. What did you tell him? The truth. That I didn't know you before, but that you looked sad a lot, like you were carrying something heavy that no one could see. Noah's eyes met his, direct and honest. I told him that when you stood up for me, it wasn't like you were trying to be a hero. It was like you understood what it feels like when people are cruel for no reason. Ethan's throat tightened. The accuracy of Noah's perception was startling. How had this boy, whom he'd known for such a short time, seen so clearly what Ethan had spent years trying to hide? I'm sorry I avoided you, he said finally. I'm not very good at this. Friendship? Noah offered. Yeah, that. Noah smiled, relief evident in his relaxing shoulders. That's okay. I'm not always good at it either. My therapist says friendship is like learning a new language. It takes practice and patience. Your therapist sounds smart, Ethan said, returning the smile hesitantly. She is. She also says that sometimes the people who need friends the most are the ones who push them away the hardest. Noah tilted his head. Is that what you were doing? Pushing me away because you need friends? A laugh bubbled up unexpectedly. I think your therapist might be a little too smart. Noah beamed, clearly pleased with the response. So we're still friends? The question was so earnest, so hopeful, that any remaining resistance in Ethan crumbled. Yeah, Noah. We're still friends. Good, good. Because I told my mom about you, and she wants you to come for dinner on Friday. She makes really good lasagna, and you don't have to talk a lot if you don't want to. They know I do enough talking for everyone. The invitation caught Ethan off guard. Dinner with Noah's family, with Principal Warner in his home, not his office. The idea was terrifying. I don't know if that's a good idea, he hedged. Why not? Noah's directness again, cutting through pretense. Ethan struggled to articulate the vague dread. It's just, your grandfather is the principal. It's weird. At school, he's the principal. Noah agreed. But at home, he's just Grandpa George who falls asleep watching baseball and collects rocks and makes terrible dad jokes. He looked at Ethan earnestly. Please? Mom said I could invite a friend, and you're my friend. Something warm and unfamiliar expanded in Ethan's chest at those simple words. You're my friend. How long had it been since he'd been someone's chosen companion, not just a familiar face or convenient ally? Okay, he found himself saying, if you're sure it's all right. Noah's smile was like the sun breaking through clouds. It's all right. I'll text you our address. We eat at 6, but you can come earlier if you want to see my rock collection. I have a fluorite specimen that glows under UV light. As they left the art room together, Ethan felt something shift inside him. A small, tentative opening where there had only been walls before. And though part of him still whispered warnings, a growing voice suggested that perhaps friendship wasn't the weakness he'd always feared it to be. The Warners lived in a modest 2-story house just a few blocks from school. As Ethan stood on the porch Friday evening, clutching a small potted plant his mother had insisted he bring, "You never show up empty-handed, Ethan. I raised you better than that." His stomach knotted with anxiety. The door swung open before he could knock, revealing Noah's beaming face. "You came, and you brought a plant? Is it for my mom? She likes plants. She has 17 houseplants, not counting the ones on the porch, which are technically still houseplants but live outside for the summer." The nervous energy that had been building all day began to dissolve in the face of Noah's enthusiasm. Yeah, it's for your mom. My mom said I should bring something. Your mom is right. Social conventions dictate bringing a gift when invited to someone's home for the first time. That's what my social skills book says. Noah took his arm, pulling him inside. Come in. Mom's finishing dinner and Grandpa's setting the table. The house was warm and lived in, with bookshelves lining the walls and family photos crowding every surface. It smelled of garlic and tomatoes and something freshly baked. Nothing like the sterile, institutional feeling of the principal's office. Mom! Ethan's here and he brought a plant. Noah called, leading him toward the kitchen. A woman with Noah's same sandy hair turned from the stove, wiping her hands on a dish towel. Her smile was warm and immediate. Ethan, we're so glad you could join us. I'm Grace, Noah's mom. She had Noah's eyes too. Kind, direct, with no hint of the judgment or pity Ethan had grown accustomed to seeing from adults. Thank you for inviting me, Mrs. Warner, he said awkwardly, thrusting the plant forward. This is for you. It's some kind of succulent, I think. It's beautiful, and please call me Grace. She accepted the plant with genuine pleasure. And look at that, it's an Echeveria elegans. One I don't have yet. You have a good eye. Before Ethan could admit he'd grabbed the first plant he saw at the grocery store, Principal Warner entered from the dining room. In khakis and a faded University of Michigan sweatshirt, he looked startlingly different from the authoritative figure who roamed Westlake's hallways. Ethan, he said, extending his hand. Good to see you outside of school. I'm George when we're not on campus. Shaking the principal's, George's hand felt surreal. Thank you for having me, sir. None of that sir business here, George said with a chuckle. We're not big on formality in this house, are we, Noah? Nope, Noah agreed cheerfully. Can I show Ethan my rocks before dinner, Mom? Grace checked her watch. 10 minutes, then we eat. And wash your hands after handling the specimens. Noah practically bounced with excitement as he led Ethan upstairs to his room. Unlike the chaotic spaces of most teenagers, Noah's room was meticulously organized. Books arranged by height on shelves, bed made with hospital corners, desk free of clutter except for a laptop and a small globe. The real centerpiece, though, was a glass-fronted cabinet filled with rows of labeled rocks and minerals, each in its own small display stand. This is my collection, Noah said proudly, opening the cabinet. I have 78 specimens. Grandpa helps me find them. Sometimes we go to mineral shows or special stores when we travel. As Noah carefully selected stones to show him, explaining each one's properties and origins with encyclopedic detail, Ethan found himself relaxing. There was something soothing about Noah's passion, his absolute focus on something he loved. This one's my favorite, Noah said finally, gently removing a deep purple stone shot through with what looked like gold filaments. It's iolite with pyrite inclusions. Grandpa got it for me when my dad got deployed last year. He said it represents courage and truth, and that even when things look dark, there's always light to be found if you look at things from the right angle. He handed it to Ethan, who took it carefully. It's beautiful, he said, meaning it. The stone caught the light, revealing hidden depths of color. You can hold it up to the light, Noah instructed. When Ethan did, the stone seemed to transform, the purple deepening in some areas while fading to almost transparent in others. Whoa, Ethan breathed. It changes. Pleochroism. Noah nodded, the scientific term rolling easily off his tongue. It means many-colored. The crystal structure absorbs light differently depending on the angle you view it from. He smiled. Kind of like people, I think. We look different depending on how you see us. The simple observation struck Ethan with unexpected force. How many people had he dismissed based on a single perspective? How many had dismissed him? Boys! Dinner! Grace's voice called up the stairs. As they headed down to the dining room, Ethan found himself wondering what new angles he might discover at this table, with this family who had welcomed him so readily into their home. Dinner was unlike anything Ethan had experienced in years. The Warners talked, really talked, about their days, their thoughts, their questions. There were no phones at the table, no television murmuring in the background, just conversation that flowed and ebbed naturally, punctuated by laughter and the occasional gentle debate. Noah spoke freely, sometimes going on enthusiastic tangents about rocks or facts he'd learned, but no one cut him off or exchanged knowing glances. They listened, asked questions, gently guided him back to the main conversation when needed. So, Ethan, George said as they moved to dessert, homemade apple crisp that filled the room with cinnamon and warmth. Noah tells us you're quite the artist. Ethan nearly choked on his water. I just doodle sometimes. He's being modest, Noah interjected. I've seen his notebook. He draws these amazing detailed cityscapes with tiny people doing different things in all the windows. It's like a whole world. Heat crept up Ethan's neck. He'd never shown anyone those drawings intentionally. They were just something he did to pass time, to escape into a world he controlled. That sounds remarkable, Grace said, her interest seeming genuine. Have you taken any art classes? Just the required one freshman year, Ethan mumbled. It's not really a career path or anything. Why not? George asked, surprising him. Some of the most fulfilling careers come from following what brings us joy, not what seems practical. Says the man with a PhD in education administration. Grace teased her father. George laughed. And a basement full of rocks that bring me more happiness than my degree ever did. My point is, Ethan, don't dismiss your talents so quickly. The world needs more beauty in it. There was something about the way he said it, matter of fact, with no hint of condescension, that made Ethan want to believe him. After dinner, as Noah excitedly showed Ethan his favorite board game, Grace and George cleaned up in the kitchen. Ethan could hear their murmured conversation, catching fragments that made him pause. Good influence on him. First friend he's brought home, worried about next year when he shouldn't eavesdrop, but something in their tones kept him listening. He'll be fine, Dad, Grace was saying more clearly now. Noah has more strength than people give him credit for. I know that, George replied. I just wish the world saw it too. High school can be cruel. Yes, but there are also people like Ethan who surprise you, who stand up when it matters. Ethan moved away then, a strange tightness in his chest. He'd never thought of himself as strong, as someone who made a difference. He'd been surviving, not living, certainly not influencing anyone positively. But here was this family talking about him as if his actions had mattered, as if he mattered. By the time George drove him home later that evening, something had shifted inside Ethan, a slow, careful unfurling of possibility. As he thanked the principal for the ride, George gripped his shoulder briefly. You're welcome in our home anytime, Ethan. I mean that. Looking into the older man's eyes, Ethan was startled to find no agenda, no hidden meaning, just the simple offer of belonging. Thank you. He managed, the words feeling inadequate for the warmth spreading through him. I'd like that. On Monday, Jason Reeves returned from his suspension. Ethan had almost forgotten about him, these past weeks having taken on a different rhythm. Lunches with Noah and sometimes Mia, occasional texts from Noah in the evenings about rocks or facts or questions that popped into his mind. But as Jason shouldered past him in the hallway, hissing, "This isn't over, Miller," reality came crashing back. The brief respite was over. The real world had returned. The old Ethan would have hunched his shoulders, made himself smaller, invisible. But something stopped him this time. Maybe the memory of the Warners' dining table, or Noah's unguarded friendship, or the weight of that purple stone in his palm, changing with the angle of light. Instead, he straightened his spine and continued walking. Not in fear, but in the growing awareness that there were perspectives beyond Jason's, beyond the narrow hallways of Westlake High. At lunch, Noah was waiting at their usual table, arranging his food in its familiar pattern. His face lit up when he saw Ethan. I asked my mom if you could come over again this weekend, he said without preamble. We're going to the mineral show in Eastbrook on Saturday. There's supposed to be a dealer from Arizona with rare wolfenite specimens. The simple inclusion in their plans sent a warm current through Ethan. That sounds cool. I'd like to go. Noah beamed, then his expression shifted to something more hesitant. Jason's back today. Yeah, I saw him. Are you worried about what he might do? Ethan considered the question seriously. A little, he admitted, but not as much as before. Noah nodded solemnly. Grandpa says courage isn't about not being afraid. It's about doing what's right even when you are afraid. Your grandpa says a lot of wise things, Ethan observed with a small smile. He reads a lot of inspirational quotes on the internet, Noah confided, making Ethan laugh. But I think he believes them too. As they ate, Ethan noticed Jason across the cafeteria, surrounded by his usual crowd. Their eyes met briefly, and Jason's narrowed with unmistakable animosity. But instead of the usual spike of fear, Ethan felt something different. A calm certainty that whatever came next, he wouldn't face it alone. That certainty was tested sooner than he expected. After school, as he waited for Noah by the science building, where they usually met to walk home, Jason and two of his friends cornered him in the empty courtyard. Think you're special now, Miller? Jason's voice was low, dangerous. Walking around like you own the place? Hanging out with the retard? Anger flared hot and immediate. Don't call him that. Or what? Jason stepped closer. You'll run crying to the principal? Everyone knows why you didn't get expelled. Because you protected his precious grandson. Must be nice having connections. You don't know what you're talking about, Ethan said, struggling to keep his voice steady. Don't I? You were nothing before this. A ghost, a loser. Now suddenly you're having dinner at Warner's house? Playing the hero. Jason's face twisted with something that looked almost like hurt beneath the anger. Some of us have been working our asses off for years to get noticed, to matter. And you just stumble into it by accident. The accusation hit uncomfortably close to Ethan's own initial doubts. But weeks of Noah's friendship, of the Warners' acceptance, had shown him something different. That connections weren't about advantage or status, but about seeing and being seen. It's not about mattering to everyone, Ethan said slowly, the realization forming as he spoke. It's about mattering to the right people, for the right reasons. Jason scoffed. Save the philosophy, Miller. This is about payback. He stepped forward, fist raised. But before he could strike, a voice rang out across the courtyard. Ethan, are you out here? It was Noah, rounding the corner of the building. He stopped short at the tableau before him. Jason poised to attack, his friends flanking him, Ethan backed against the wall. Something changed in Noah's face then. A hardening, a determination that transformed his usually open expression. Stop it, he said, voice stronger than Ethan had ever heard it. Leave him alone. Jason turned, a cruel smile spreading. Well, look who it is. Grandpa's not here to save you now, Parker. I don't need my grandfather, Noah said steadily, walking closer. And neither does Ethan. But if you hurt him, I will tell everyone what really happened in 7th grade at the Lake Mercer camp. Jason froze, color draining from his face. You don't know anything about that. I know you got lost and cried for 3 hours before they found you, Noah said, matter of fact. I know you wet your sleeping bag the first night. My cousin Tommy was your counselor. He told my aunt, who told my mom. One of Jason's friends snickered, quickly silenced by a venomous glare. You're lying, Jason hissed, but uncertainty had crept into his voice. I don't lie, Noah said simply. It's too complicated to remember what's true and what's not. My therapist says I should always tell the truth, but be kind about it when possible. He paused. I'm trying to be kind right now by giving you a chance to walk away. The moment stretched, taut with possibility. Then Jason stepped back, jaw clenched. This isn't over, he muttered, but the threat sounded hollow now. With a jerk of his head to his friends, he stalked away, shoulders rigid with humiliation. As they disappeared around the building, Ethan stared at Noah in astonishment. Did your cousin really tell you that stuff about Jason? Noah shifted uncomfortably. No, I don't have a cousin Tommy. I made that up. His distress was evident. I lied. I'm not supposed to lie. You lied to protect me, Ethan said, still processing what had happened. You made up a whole story to scare him off. I knew he got sent to summer camp because I overheard him talking about it once. The rest I guessed. Noah looked up anxiously. Are you mad at me for lying? Something between a laugh and a sob caught in Ethan's throat. This boy, who struggled with the simplest social deceptions, had crafted an elaborate bluff to protect him. No, he said, voice rough with emotion. I'm not mad. I'm keen, grateful. No one's ever stood up for me before. Noah's face relaxed into a smile. You stood up for me first. That's what friends do. As they walked home together, the late afternoon sun casting long shadows ahead of them, Ethan felt the truth of those simple words settling into his bones. That's what friends do. Not because of obligation or advantage, but because of connection. Real, unguarded connection that transformed both people in its light. Spring melted into summer, and summer blazed toward fall. The mineral show led to weekend hikes searching for specimens, to afternoons in the Warners' backyard with guidebooks spread around them, to evenings around their dinner table where Ethan's voice grew stronger, his laughter more frequent. His mother noticed the change, commenting on it one night as they washed dishes together. A new ritual they'd started, reclaiming some of the connection that had frayed in the years of his silent withdrawal. You seem happier, she said carefully as if afraid to jinx it. More. Present. Ethan handed her a plate to dry. I guess I am. Is it Noah? And his family? She'd met them now, had coffee with Grace while the boys hunted rocks, had smiled at George's terrible jokes. Partly, Ethan said, considering. But it's also, I don't know, like I can see things differently now. His mother smiled, the tired lines around her eyes softening. Sometimes all it takes is one person who really sees us to change how we see ourselves. The wisdom of that struck him as true. Noah had seen him, not as the invisible boy or the sudden defender, but as someone worth knowing, worth befriending. And in being seen that way, Ethan had slowly begun to see himself differently too. Senior year began with a strange new reality. Ethan Miller was no longer invisible. He wasn't popular, wasn't suddenly surrounded by friends, but he moved through the hallways with a different energy, head up, eyes forward. He had Noah and Mia, who had become an unexpected trio, bound by their shared outsider status but no longer defined by it. Even Jason had shifted, not to friendship, but to a wary distance, their paths crossing with nothing more than tense nods. The story Noah had invented never circulated. It had served its purpose in that moment, not as ongoing ammunition. It was in October that Principal Warner, George, called Ethan into his office. Unlike previous summons, this one came with no anxiety, just curiosity. "I wanted to show you something," George said, closing the door behind him. He handed Ethan a brochure for Westridge College, a small art school about an hour away. "They have an exceptional urban design program," George continued, gesturing for Ethan to sit, "and they're holding a special portfolio day next month for high school seniors. I took the liberty of signing you up." Ethan stared at the brochure, then at the principal. "I don't understand." "Noah showed me some of your drawings," George said gently. "The cityscapes. With your permission, I showed them to a friend who teaches architecture there. She was quite impressed." The familiar heat crept up Ethan's neck. "They're just doodles." "No," George said firmly. "They're talent. Raw, untrained, but real. And if you're interested, this could be a path worth exploring." The idea was simultaneously terrifying and exhilarating. College had always been an abstract concept, something other people did. His grades were decent but not spectacular. His extracurriculars non-existent. But art school, that was something he'd never even considered as a possibility. "I can't afford something like this," he said finally, the practical obstacle easier to voice than his deeper fears. "There are scholarships," George replied, "and financial aid, but first you need to see if it's something you want. All I'm suggesting is that you go to the portfolio day, talk to the admissions counselors, see the campus. No commitment, just exploration." Put that way, it seemed less daunting. "Okay," Ethan said slowly. "I'll think about it." George smiled, the expression warming his usually stern features. "That's all I ask." "And Ethan?" He paused, something almost like affection in his eyes. "I'm proud of the young man you're becoming." The words caught Ethan off guard, stirring something deep and hungry inside him. How long had it been since an adult man had said those words to him? Had his father ever said them at all? "Thank you." He managed the simple phrase insufficient for the emotions swelling in his chest. As he left the office, the brochure clutched in his hand. Ethan felt the strange sensation of possibilities opening before him. Paths he hadn't known existed. Futures he hadn't dared to imagine. Noah was waiting in the hallway, rocking slightly on his heels as he often did when excited or nervous. "Did Grandpa tell you about the art school?" he asked immediately. "Are you mad I showed him your drawings?" "I should have asked first, but I wanted him to see how talented you are. And I forgot about the social rule about not sharing other people's things without permission." Ethan shook his head, unable to summon even token annoyance. "I'm not mad. Are you going to go? To the portfolio day? I could go with you if you want." For moral support. That's what friends do for important things. Looking at Noah's earnest face, Ethan felt the last of his resistance melt away. This boy had changed his life. Not through grand gestures, but through the simple act of genuine friendship, of seeing value where Ethan had seen none. "Yeah," he said, surprising himself with the certainty in his voice. "I think I am going to go, and I'd like it if you came with me." Noah beamed, bouncing slightly on his toes. "It's going to be great. You'll see. And after, we can get ice cream to celebrate, no matter what happens." As they walked to class together, Ethan found himself smiling at Noah's excited chatter about art schools and future possibilities. 6 months ago, he'd been a shadow, existing at the edges of life. Now he was planning for a future, considering paths that led away from Westlake, but wouldn't leave him traveling alone. All because a bullied teen had defended a special needs student, not realizing he was the principal's grandson, and in doing so, had found not just a friend, but a way back to himself. The night before the portfolio day, Ethan sat at his desk, carefully organizing his drawings. His mother had bought him a proper portfolio case, An investment in your future. She'd called it, and now he was faced with the daunting task of deciding which pieces to include. The cityscapes were his best work, detailed renderings of imaginary urban landscapes where each window told a different story. But there were newer pieces too. Landscapes inspired by his hikes with Noah, still lifes of rocks and minerals with their complex crystalline structures, and a series of portraits he'd been working on in secret. He pulled out the most recent one, Noah in profile, head tilted in that characteristic way as he examined a specimen, joy and concentration illuminating his features. Ethan had captured something essential about him, about the way he moved through the world with open curiosity and unguarded emotion. There were others too. Mia with her fierce intelligence, his mother in a rare moment of relaxation, even George and Grace at their dinner table, laughing at some shared joke. People who had become his world, captured in lines and shadows. As he sorted through the drawings, his phone buzzed with a text from Noah. "Good luck tomorrow. Remember what Grandpa says about courage. It's not about not being scared, it's about doing it anyway. You're the bravest person I know." Ethan stared at the message, throat tight with emotion. Brave was never a word he would have applied to himself. Cautious, maybe. Invisible, certainly. But brave? Yet when he thought about the past 6 months, standing up to Jason, opening himself to friendship, considering a future that terrified and excited him in equal measure, perhaps there was some truth to it after all. He texted back, "Thanks. Couldn't have done any of this without you." Noah's reply came instantly. "Yes, you could. You just needed someone to remind you who you really are." Looking at the drawings spread before him, at the world he had created on paper, and the one he was building in reality, Ethan felt something settle into place, a sense of rightness, of possibility, of a future unfolding not in spite of who he was, but because of it. Tomorrow might bring rejection or opportunity. The path ahead was uncertain, as all paths worth taking were. But for perhaps the first time in his life, Ethan Miller wasn't facing that uncertainty alone. And that, he was beginning to understand, made all the difference.